Welcome to Around the Fire, a space for conversations to nurture hearts and build lives following Jesus, thinking more deeply about big ideas and how to apply them.
Hello, that was Johnny, and I am Sarah. Welcome to Around the Fire and to this very, very special episode. So if you are joining us for the first time, you are really, really welcome. If you are joining us for, I don't know, the 90th time,
now.
there's a lot of them
now.
You're really, really welcome. We love building community. We have the privilege of leading together in community in North Birmingham with Elim Life Church, but you are welcome, and we want to kind of get your feedback, your ideas, your suggestions. There's lots that we've kind of chatted about over the years, and we'd love anything kind of back from you on that, or what you're doing, how you're finding and following Jesus. Get in touch, podcast at elimlifechurch.co.uk. So this episode, I'm quite excited about this one, is a little bit different to what we normally do. We are not a leadership podcast. We have the privilege of leading in community and in other places and spaces, and we love what we do, and we're very, I don't know what the word is, we feel like, I'm speaking for us now, I feel quite privileged to be able to do some of the things that I'm getting to do with the people I'm getting to do it with. And so we wanted to do a bit of an episode around leading well. Both Johnny and myself have the privilege of being friends with some brilliant leaders, and we're often trying to sort of encourage each other and cheer each other on and support each other and learn together and learn from each other. And so you are invited into this conversation. Now, you may be watching or listening going, oh, I'm not like a leader of a church community. Hopefully there will be some things in this conversation that will be helpful to you.
For sure.
We're going to talk about leading well in lots of different contexts. Obviously, ours is in church leadership, but you're welcome to kind of be a part of the conversation. In 2025, which is when we're recording this, it feels like we might be in 2028. We've been sat around this table for so long, recording a bunch of podcasts today. But no, we're still in 2025. We felt that the Spirit was inviting us to think about walking well. This idea of pilgrimage with God, of walking with God, of walking with others, of loving the Lord our God with all our heart, soul, mind, and strength, and loving our neighbours ourselves. And so how do we do that? And so we want to kind of give that idea, that big picture idea around this idea of leading well. But to get us there, Johnny, would you share with our listeners and our incredible online community for Around the Fire, you've been helping us to think about what leadership is, what it looks like now, and how perhaps it's changed over the years. And then we'll maybe get into some of the ways that we're leading well and a few of the questions that have been given to us. So thank you.
Cool. So this was formed out of a conversation that we had with a friend of ours, and you and I were invited to go and spend a bit of time with them. And I created my kind of part of the puzzle for this was this idea around bridge leadership. And let me give us a whistle-stop tour, because this was created to work in the room with people. So I don't know how it will translate as, in this format. And I've also got a presentation of this to a very different audience coming up quite soon. So I'm still playing with it to see how it works. But it works on kind of this as an idea that leadership is pretty complicated at the best of times, and this perhaps is not the best of times. So
welcome.
And so then the privilege of leadership in a complex time, what then do we do? And identifying some theories of leadership in that. So let me just give us a whistle-stop tour of some of those theories.
We think the word leadership has been around for forever, but it hasn't necessarily. And the idea of what makes a good leader and how that works within a church community or a Christian context or in the kingdom, there's lots of people who've got sort of lots of opinions and ideas about it. So to understand how that has changed, I think will help us to think about leading well. So
I hope so. That's the intention.
Go. We got this. Let's go.
We can do this.
Come on.
So leadership is obviously not new, but leadership theory, in terms of writing this stuff down and identifying some of these patterns, is relatively new, like for human history. So the 1840s-ish, we have great man leadership. That's already offensive in 2025. But that is the point that's being made by going back in time, and that leaders are born and not made, probably male. The exceptions are exactly that. They're exceptions. So there is a focus on the innate characteristics of the leader. And so they're very few, they're really rare, divinely selected individuals that have a unique ability to be effective leaders. And so think of these big, kind of notorious by reputation through history, singular individuals who just were just born and not made. They just came out of the earth with the ability to lead people.
And leadership not defined by necessarily making or creating or doing something good, but just the ability to corral people.
Straight up characteristics of the individual. So then we move a little bit later, we move about 100 years along, and there is trait theory, T-R-A-I-T, trait theory. And so we are looking for what are the traits and the characteristics in those types of people, and how can we they can be born or made. And so great man still exists, but then from that, what can we glean from that? So now we can make great leaders.
Yeah, we can develop leaders.
It can be...
Or develop leadership traits.
Effective leadership can be inherited or trained. So if we find the right characteristics and we learn the right characteristics, and they're like mental, social, physical, but it's not very consistent. Like it's a bit of a problem. We still see a lot of this in a lot of the psychometric tools that are used in HR, which I will let you draw your own conclusions from my tone about perhaps what we should do about that. So then we chug on to the next kind of cycle of leadership theory, behavioral leadership. So then what are the actions and the skills of leaders? So now we're thinking leaders are made. We're not interested in the traits or the characteristics, so we're moving away from perhaps bombastic personalities into just behaviors. We want to develop skills, we want to develop behaviors, but we're not particularly concerned with the situation or the environment. We just want to be able to develop the skill and repeat the skill, which obviously leads to the progression of the next stage of observable leadership traits, situational leaders. So it's an adaptive style that takes into account the environment, wouldn't you know it? The environment is quite important. And so the leader-follower dynamics are influenced by the environment. So focus on leadership in a particular situation rather than the traits or the behaviors. We want to be able to assess the context in which we're operating and then decide which style fits the best. So is it contingent? Is it situational? The ability to perceive, I don't know, let's pick a ridiculous extreme. I'm on a submarine would be very, very different to I'm in a boardroom. Where I am is going to affect the type of tools that I reach for. Fine. So we're having a blend of these things. Then we get to like the 1990s, and there is this, in square quotes, new leadership, where we're focusing on the awareness that not one singular type of leadership can cover all of the things that are required in rapid change and high complexity. And so if you think about the way that industry changed through that time as well, in that there's a move away from top-down influence models and more around the interactions among the leader and the follower. So the situation and the system, the focus is on the capacity of the follower. And so we're seeing more coaching models arrive to release potential from people. And we get into within the new leadership models, we have transactional. So leadership as a cost benefit. And so we're looking for things that are lean and agile that might be triggering the kind of learnt behaviors to some people. And so we're making decisions at pace, and it relies on authority, and the leader exchanges reward for effort and results. So this is your classic 90s stockbroker, make more money, do more things, and we will reward you with more
or
shiny
your CEO,
things.
Or your COO. Absolutely.
The other kind of branch of new leadership from the 90s is transformational. So it's more the inspiring of followers to achieve higher goals. And we see a huge scutch of these, Steve Jobs being kind of famously...
So not necessarily about rewards, although that would be part of the system, but actually I'm going to inspire you with a story or a vision or an idea or something bigger than you to be a part of, and you will then be willing to give into that.
So we do all of that fun stuff, and then we more... recently, 2000s, we get into shared models of leadership. So success is dependent on coordinated leadership distributed throughout the organization rather than the actions of a few at the top. It's collaborative, so it's leading each other. It's collective, so it's engaging. It's person-centered, and it's servant leadership, which if anybody who's been around church in the last 20 years, now your bells are starting to ring.
I literally had just written down servant leadership in my notes as you were talking. I was like, it's coming.
So the focus on the whole system and the importance of the followers, the team supported, we serve people first, it's inclusive and it's complex.
It's really interesting because at that time I was working for a supermarket chain, and we all had to do that kind of training of how we would lead each other.
Yes.
And if I was needed in this department, could I lead here? Could those skills? So in lots of different spaces and places, that kind of was happening, I think.
And so we, again, this isn't necessarily linear in its progression, but that's the observation that we see, and when we start to see
because you still have like people who are looking for the great man, you know, and you still have people who are looking for that hierarchical. It's not that those other models disappear; they just the leading edge gets superseded each time. Is that a kind of fair?
Yep. So then we arrive we're starting to arrive now into where maybe feels more prevalent to us, in that we perhaps don't even talk about leadership anymore. We perhaps talk about creating culture.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so we're considering the whole system. It's contextual interactions that happen across an entire system. And so everything is part of the puzzle. And modern leadership seems to involve new definitions of the leader, the follower, and the situation.
Yeah. And like in our current context of like the world that we're living in right now in 2025, just how separated your character from your output can be as well.
Yep. So then in this idea of, so where does bridge leadership come into this? So again, in the exercises and some of the sessions that I do with this, so then where are we? And we maybe ask people to explore or identify some of their own traits or preferences or skill sets or whatever. But the answer really is yes. Like it's all in the room. To the point you've just made, it's all in the room. All the theories are present and they all have legitimate input, but they also all have preferences about the past, the present and the future. And so again, we circle back. Leadership is difficult at the best of times, and this is maybe not the best of times. And so if we can be conscious of what is in the room, conscious of what's expected, conscious of where we've been, then the hope is that we can do some things about that. And so my suggestion is then the type of leadership that we need right now is bridge leadership, defined by knowing where we've been, but can also clearly articulate where we're going. And so then to be able to bridge that gap and to help people get from there to there. Now that's a different type of leadership to anything we've seen before, because we're not perhaps going to be given our flowers for getting to the place. There's going to be a different type of leadership required when we get there. So then what is a bridge and what does it need to be? So then we spend some time in the session thinking about what's a healthy bridge look like. It's got to be able to bear weight. It's got to be able to clearly communicate that it can get you from where you were to where you're going, that it can withstand the conditions, that it can bear the load, that it can, cope with the type of traffic that it's set up to do. We kind of spend a little bit of time of doing all of that. So then in a complex time to lead, what are some of the things that help us to build that bridge? So we talk about honesty.
Yeah.
And there's an Ernst & Young study that I reference that identifies authenticity as Gen Z's most important value in life. The reason I highlight that is I think in leadership, often we hear fake it till you make it.
It's this fascinating, because we're in a bridge moment, right? Is that there's this fascinating moment I think we're in where we still have the fake it till you make it world where you can't acknowledge weakness or vulnerability, or if you don't have the answers, if you're not seen to have, I know where we're going and what we're doing, if you don't feel like you are the person that can take charge and you're reliant on other people, that's in the room. But then there's also this desire, as the study showed, for honesty. And by honesty, like to be able to go, hey, I don't have that piece of the puzzle, do you? And for that not to feel threatening or for it to feel like, oh my gosh,
You're
what
gonna
kind of
lose
leader
your
are
job.
you?
Or-
Like
yeah,
you can't, you don't even, you haven't got all the answers. You don't, and you can't fake it and feel like you've got all the answers. So I think we do have that. And I think the other thing that we also have in that, which I think is fascinating at the moment with leading, is we have different generations thinking differently about what honesty is.
Yeah, very.
So what is honesty? Well, honesty might mean that I don't have the answer to that, but I don't need to share that. I can find other ways to find that help. So that is an honest thing. Whereas some people within kind of culture and context would be like, no, honesty means like whatever I'm feeling, whatever is true to me, whatever is in my like body or my heart or my thinking in the moment is honest and true, and so I will share that, and you have to find a way to respect that or receive that. And so even defining honesty feels like a bridge moment, right?
100%.
Of like, oh, what does it mean? There's a difference between being deliberately not truthful. That's not what we're saying. But what does honesty and authenticity look like for different people? Will look
It's
different.
very, very
and
different.
so all of that is in the room. So how are you leading, understanding that for, and maybe this is part of the answer, but like that for this person, what would be most helpful? So say in a team setting, for this person, it would not be helpful for them to know that I don't know the answer to that thing in that way. But it might be helpful for us to know, hey, we're going to find that out together. And for somebody else, it might be helpful to go, do you know what? I really don't know. What do you think? And I guess it's then bridging and trying to discern and go, what is the most helpful thing that I still remain true and authentic to who I am and who God's made me to be, but will be most helpful for the team or the project or the need or the opportunity.
For sure. It's
wild, isn't it?
it's really complex. It's really, really complex. So we talk about honesty, then we talk about team. The way that I like to introduce this idea is that life is hard enough. And so instead of being at odds with those who are, working with you, then perhaps the opportunity then instead is to over-invest in each other. And we have conversations about what that looks like and how we can do that. And then the third piece of how do we build the bridge is thinking about fuel. So what do you need to live well? And I'm not talking about, because everybody goes, oh, Fortnite in Barbados.
Not me, by the way.
Yeah.
I'm not a big fan of the heat. Give me Norway. Let's go.
But that is I don't want to steal your thunder, but that's an act of bypassing.
Yeah.
And so the question that I ask then when people don't really know how to look that in the eye is, if nothing changes, how far does what you currently have in the tank take you? So if you've got to lead your team for the next 20 months on what you currently have, what does that look like? How much of that bridge are you getting built? How much are you able to sustain and support and help and deal with complexity and need? And most people go, I don't want to do that. And I go, okay, so then we need to
talk about fuel.
So then we need to talk about fuel. We need to talk about how you are living well. And that's not about escapism or the abstraction of, the other ways that we can self-medicate through escapism in our minds, in our bodies, in our relationships, in our decision-making, in our habits, in our whatever. And so then hopefully, because we've over-invested in team and because we are doing the piece around honesty, that's received as, hey, this is how the bridge gets built, not how my life gets torn apart. Because that's the day and the age that we live in. So then we talk a little bit about some of the tools for the consequence of some of these historical leadership models. And so people might have heard me talk about this before. This is not true of you as a human, but this is true of you as a leader. You're not an individual, you're an office. What I mean by that is that you are everyone who has ever gone before you, good or bad.
Yeah, that function.
You represent that. And so
that role.
You represent that when you stand in front of your team. And it's not fair, but it is leadership. And so even if it's a brand new role within the organization that you're a part of, you still are an office. You're representative of everybody's interaction with leadership, good, bad, or indifferent. Up until that point, you now become that.
Well, you become the interface for that, and
Yeah.
sometimes people can't separate out that from their previous
No.
experience, good, bad, indifferent.
No.
Yeah.
And so we talk about that because I don't think enough people talk about that. And
Yeah,
how
that it might not be you they're cross at.
Yeah, right.
It might be
Yeah.
some experience of something that happened in another context,
That
in
you had
another
nothing to
space,
do with.
but you are representative of that in that space.
And if you're wired to bring that awareness into those conversations, you can ask better questions
Yeah.
to build the bridge. So we talk about that a little bit, and then we talk about what is one of my kind of repeating red button things is I do the steak and lobster exercise with people to help them imagine some of what I think leadership is in bridge leadership is dealing with consequence really well, even if it's not of your own making.
Yeah.
And so the exercise that we do is I ask people to imagine a meal, and they are, and we really heavily put down some positive reframing in that the meal is with your favorite people in your favorite place. We're not cross with people who are with you at the table, and you've enjoyed your favorite whatever it is. And then as the night has progressed, it's appropriate and right for those who need to relieve the babysitter, or those who've got to get up early for the meeting tomorrow, or those who've got to travel, or everybody legitimately leaves the table until it dawns on you there's only one person left at the table and there's only one thing left to do, and you're the only person left at the table, and the only thing left to do is pay the bill. And then we draw all of those parallels and those connections of, okay, so, and the exercise that I do with people is I ask them to write the receipt, what's on the bill. And that could look like a mental health crisis.
Yeah.
That could look like isolation. That could look like turbulence in culture. That could look like professional burnout. That could look like overscheduling. That could look like failing leaders. That could look like the internet. That could look like your diet. That could look like whatever it is. However, we are open to the position of leadership being big enough to pay the bill. And so we use that receipt as a prayer practice.
Yeah.
And then we kind of inflect that towards our dependence on the Spirit of God and the invitation to lead well in building a bridge, not throwing anybody off it.
Yeah, and not being cross at what's gone before on the other side, and not being terrified of what is yet to come, that, you know, that we're making the road as we're walking it, you know, we're making the bridge as we're on it. It's not that the bridge exists and we're just taking people over it. We are having to create that bridge and find those ways. And so that requires a level of, well, awareness in your own self. That requires a level of awareness of other people, of your capacity, of your graces, of your gifts, of your skills, of what you can offer into the bridge building process, and
what you don't have.
and of, what you don't have, what you might need to bring in from other places and spaces and people, and what is yours to carry in that moment.
Yes.
Like what part of that bridge building kind of moment in life that we're in right now is mine to carry, to steward, to hold, and how do I best do that to serve Jesus, to serve the kingdom, to say yes to what the Spirit is doing here and join in with that, but bringing with you that awareness of how this has changed.
Yeah, totally. The encouragement as well is as we are building the bridge, where we're going, and from a faith perspective, if I'm speaking to leaders who know Jesus, I will put down heavily where we're going. There is an openness to the things of the Spirit that we've never encountered before. And the example that I use for that is that you can buy tarot cards in the works. And that's deliberately a provocative thing for, it's a little bit of a bait and switch with people, in that you say people are spiritually open like never before. And there is some assumption with what you're going to follow that up with. But as leaders, let's have eyes to see the environment that we are in, what spiritual openness looks like in mainstream culture.
Crystals and tarots. Yeah.
And so instead of being threatened or afraid of that stuff, no, we're not encouraging people towards those things, but that is giving us a temperature reading of
culture,
the culture we're building a bridge in. And so that's telling us where we can put certain things that we've never been able to put things before. There is an experiential openness that we can lead with, that we can say, hey, instead of explaining the mechanics of how I think prayer works, would you like me to pray with you?
Yeah, absolutely. Would you like to experience something of this? And because there is an openness to So it's not like you have to rationalize or bring an apologetic for something supernatural or spiritual. There is an openness to that being a reality. Our invitation is to point them to Jesus in that and point them to the Holy Spirit in that. Actually, let's do that together, but let's experience that together. And I think prayer is a really great example of that, because it is rare. It's not ever impossible. It's rare if you offer to either pray for someone there and then, or to pray for them and come back to them and to pray in your own time, that people will say no, because there is this openness. 20, 30 years ago, it wasn't necessarily that way.
So that's what bridge leadership is, and where I think we are at the moment. Some of that pushback comes in the form of the more practically minded, which is okay. That's legit. I'm not talking about using bridge leadership as if you run an A&E department.
Yeah, it's not like a processes and systems thing, is it? No. Also, we're not those people, so don't be listening to this. But I think it is about understanding some of the component parts that are making up the landscape that people are leading within and living within. And then you go, oh, I understand that. And then it's not about the person in front of you and whatever that might present as with a person, either a brilliant opportunity or a problem to kind of work through. You then go, oh, I wonder, does this require honesty? And what does honesty look like for this person? Does this require, have I just not expanded the team, built into the team, given opportunity for team, because we could carry this together in a different way? Or there's a creative idea coming from a space that I don't have. I don't have that perspective or that understanding. So for both of us, we would say that we're not particularly good at the systems and processes. And so our team context looks like we have brilliant people who really, really are. Now, that is not a value statement of which is more valued. All of that is valuable. Right. All of that is needed. This institutional hierarchical idea is not something we're kind of full send with. We're saying, actually, what does collaborative and collegiate?
Nice. Explain that for us.
Well, you often see that in like an education setting where you might be in different departments and have slightly different roles, but it's a flat hierarchy, if that makes sense. Great. We can't have hierarchy that's flat, but you know what I mean. It's like a flatter organizational chart. Yeah. And so what that means is you're not threatened if the history teacher comes to you, who's a geography teacher, and says, hey, I really need to borrow your geography skills to teach this thing on history because I don't have that piece of the puzzle. Great. So it's that collegiate thing, not just collaborative of we're doing this thing together for a shared outcome. It's actually I'm borrowing and pulling in from other people's expertise or practitioner kind of area of practitioners, and I'm bringing those in for the thing that I'm responsible for. Without threat, without it being threatening, because ultimately in an education setting, the school wins or the students win, or, you know, it's that idea.
The bridge gets built. Yeah.
And so I think that's really, really interesting. And then what fuel looks like for people. Is this person, so you're leading a team, you're having a team meeting and someone is really, really not responding well, they're getting quite agitated, they're becoming quite negative. And so then you go through, you can use this as like a little bit of a like sort of checklist idea of like, oh, do we need more honesty? Is this empathy? Is it fuel? Is this person like overstretched? Is this person under-resourced? And so they then become just really good tools or questions or awarenesses that help how you lead and help me to not feel as cross with myself or other people.
Great. I'm not John Maxwell, praise the Lord. And so my definitions here might be different to perhaps what you've received, because I can feel the feedback from task-orientated people saying that's all lovely, but nothing gets done. I would suggest if your commission as in your leadership role is just to achieve tasks, you're not leading, you're managing.
Yeah.
And so we're talking about leading. We're talking about when you
making, creating, shaping.
When you've got the privilege of informing the environment that people are doing anything in. And if that is task driven, these things still are true. You're still building the bridge, and that might be worth some consideration.
Just that piece of the puzzle that is yours is a different thing.
Yeah. And so that might be why your team don't want to commit to doing overtime, because they're rinsed because the singular perspective is not building the bridge. And again, this is not condemning people. This is saying the tools that we need to reach for in the times that we live in are different, and we've got to build the bridge. And so just getting the thing done and dragging everybody over the line
without an awareness of consequence or a care of consequence
is not going to cut it in 2025. You might get things done, but it won't build a bridge. It won't get you from where you were to where you're going.
And you're less likely to have people
come with you.
Come with you, yeah.
And so then at either end of the honesty scale, I was thinking about there's an eye roll at either end of the honesty scale of, well, this is my truth. And people who don't hold to that ideology just roll their eyes and go, this is ridiculous, this is why nothing ever gets done. But then at the other end of that scale, those who presume we're only going to deal with absolutes and with empirical.
Yeah, and I know the answer, and this is the way.
The answer, this is how it's done. And we've got to stop rolling our eyes at each other.
That's really helpful.
And understand that in difference, that we're not looking for a dominant worldview to prevail. We're looking for somebody in a leadership capacity to have the ability to understand how the bridge gets built.
Yeah. And both of those are in the room.
Both of those are in the room. Yeah. And you can ask one or both to leave the room, but that also doesn't get us to where we're going. And so the component parts of whatever it is that you are trying to build, the bridge that you are trying to build, whatever you're responsible for. And if, to your point when you open the conversation, if what you lead is yourself, the component parts of the type of life that you are trying to lead well, then extend that out to households, to teams, to organizations, to nations, to whatever that looks like for you. What you have possession of is a component part that only makes a bridge when it's joined with another component part in a direction that allows those parts to bear weight when they are aligned and brought together
you've agreed
properly,
to go together. Yeah.
And you've agreed work in certain ways. And we have a colleague who's used this idea for a different piece of work to help people understand, like, oh no, you might be this very specific piece of the bridge. Beautiful, great, amazing, but we need that to connect to these other very specific pieces of the bridge. Otherwise, you're just a bit of rope. Like,
or
otherwise,
you're
just a breeze block.
No one's coming across.
It's rubbish. Like you have every right to demand terms that breeze blocks need, and that is absolutely right. And you should advocate for what breeze blocks need, but unless a breeze block ever meets a piece of tarmac, it ain't ever going to be a bridge. And so you got to understand what we are trying to achieve here is all moving in a direction, and it might look really different. And what a breeze block needs will be very different from what a bit of tarmac needs, will be very different from what a bit of rope needs. I don't know what sort of bridge this is, by the way, but
I was like, I've chains, maybe, like chain link.
But I hope that is making sense to people connecting with this, in that too often leadership, I would argue, has been reduced down to just having as many breeze blocks available to you as possible. And then we've wondered why what we've built is a road and not a bridge, or too many bits of rope. And then we've wondered why we've ended up with a hammock and not a bridge, or you understand the point I'm making. And so leadership, then not management, is the ability to see the value of all of those different pieces and to say, hey, I'm not asking you to be a breeze block. I'm asking you to be the best bit of rope that you can be, but I am going to ask you to play nicely with this breeze block over here so that we can all get to where we're going.
What the other, the contribution of the other person, and particularly within like a Christian context or a church community, like to recognize this sense that we understand that everybody has a different grace that they bring, and just want to pick up on the idea of the bridge, that we use that, and like you said, our brilliant colleague has kind of helped us to think about that. When we think about the graces that God has given us. So within leading well, it isn't just about understanding the times that we're in and how to lead and how to do that well and how to honor Jesus and how to love others well in that. I think it's also then recognizing what you bring and what is needed from others. And we've done a lot of work around Ephesians 4 and understanding some of those apostolic, prophetic, evangelistic, shepherding and teaching graces, to go, actually, we perhaps have assumed, and you've hopefully gone back and watched some of our brilliant APES conversations with Mina and Nikki and Andy. They're so good. Please go and watch them if you haven't yet. But this assumption that, because I see it like this, everybody else sees it like this. And actually, for those who have the privilege of being in leadership spaces to bring influence and shape and change, to be able to understand, hey, what you bring, what your contribution is, what your benefits and blind spots are in that, and then what others bring, and to create an environment that everybody feels like they've got something to bring, something to contribute. Some piece of, I use the idea of the mosaic, some piece of the mosaic that makes up the picture that tells the story of God, that you recognize, oh, I am just a part, so I'm not going to get too big-headed about that. But also, without this part, it doesn't make sense.
Right.
And so I think the leadership grace, or that leadership, some of the skills that we can learn are some of those like soft skills of recognizing, that person is bringing something and they might not realize that is absolute gold. And so what that person needs is me to encourage the gold in them, because they don't think it's gold. They think it's beige, you know? And then that person thinks they're bringing like this massive bucket full of gold, but actually they've got this bit and it goes here. How can I help them see where their contribution fits? And so that, again, is, I think, part of the invitation of leading well, is to honor team, to build team, to look for those who, and when I say team, I don't mean necessarily people in paid employment jobs, but I mean looking for people that you can collaborate with, looking for people that you can borrow their skills. So I would talk quite often about borrowing someone's APES grace. Like I don't have all 5 like operating brilliantly. I have a couple that I lean into more than others. And so I need somebody else's. So we were talking before we press record around this, that actually we know that shepherding as a grace, as the grace gift that God gives by the Spirit from Jesus, is not necessarily our primary lens. And so one of the ways that we have been learning to lead well in community is to go, we don't necessarily think people first in the way that a shepherd would think about their comfort, their well-being, how that's going to fit, how that's going to affect someone. And so by identifying the different graces that people have in the people that we're kind of walking well with, I often will say, hey, to one of our colleagues, can I just borrow your shepherding grace? Can you help me to see what that looks like through your eyes, through your perspective, through the grace that God's given you? Because I have a different perspective on that, and we need all of those things.
Right.
And then the person who's leading, or the people who are leading together, you are able to navigate through. It's not that everybody has to agree. It's not that everybody has to see the same way, but to be able to pull out those contributions and those perspectives, and then with the Spirit to navigate, okay, what is the way through this right now? Because the likelihood is, if you're leading right now, you won't have been there before.
No.
And your community won't have been there before, and the opportunity might not have been there before in the way that it's there now, or the challenge might be different. And so that dynamism and that flexibility to be able to move through that, but together, collaboratively and in a collegiate way, I think is so important. And for anyone who is listening or watching, who's leading and feels or has felt that pressure to be the person with all the answers, praying God just to release that off of you, because no one human can do, only Jesus, only Jesus, and he still gathered a team, right? To pass that on to, and to bring alongside with him, and to be on the road with him, and to invest in them, and to show them, and to give them opportunity, and those feedback opportunities with him. All of those things, I think, are part of what leading well in the 21st century can look like.
Yeah, it's really good. We need to take a brain break. To deal with the fly that's in the room.
Yes, but, after you. It really likes you. Have you got like some aftershave on today or something?
We've been in here too long. So we'll do a little bit of a brain break, but my kind of final thoughts on that before we just take 30 seconds is, if you are in an environment where perhaps you are the leading edge of a leadership team, or you are responsible for something, or you're flying solo, or you're a sole trader, or whatever that looks like for you, and you're like, I haven't really got team in that sense, you will have people who are advising and shaping and are walking with you. And if you haven't had these kind of conversations or these thoughts, you are likely to have recruited by type. And you're likely to have recruited what's familiar to you. You're likely to have recruited to something that you recognize or find easier to work with. And so just be brave enough to look for people who don't think like you and ask for their advice on that. You don't have to give your world away to strangers, but you can.
And also you don't have to do everything they say, but to have that perspective is
But you can
brilliant.
seek perspective that you don't have, and maybe that perspective doesn't come from the people that you find easiest to connect with in that space, and that what you might find easiest is what you are more familiar with. And so it might not be, but I think in our experience of working with people around this, and from our own team 3 years ago, and we kind of had a little check around the table and we're like, ooh, we're all quite similar.
No, nobody's shepherding,
there's
really.
a lot of personalities that are shared here, because it's easier to find affirmation and then affirmation becomes confirmation, and confirmation becomes a directional decision.
And it becomes a bias then, doesn't it?
And now you've charged off in a direction without considering the needs of others. So just check in with your kind of council of advisors, whatever that looks like, whomever that is.
I literally went to Lord of the Rings,
yeah,
the Council of Elrond.
Yeah.
Anyway,
right,
time for a break.
Go to Mordor. Welcome back. We are going to wrap up this episode with doing our best to respond to some questions that we've had. So, who's asking the questions? Me?
Yeah, do you want to go first?
Yeah. What are you reading / listening to at the moment that's helping you think about leading well?
Really good question. Thank you very much.
I had nothing to do with it.
So it's maybe not so much what I'm reading at the moment, but I'm like reapproaching and reading again. So I think I'm always a massive fan of anything by Ruth Haley Barton, Transforming Center, based in the States. She has a real heart. Essentially, she's about 3 years older than me, and I want to be here when I grow up, you know? But it's this idea of like emotionally, spiritually healthy leadership, this integration of who I am as a follower of Jesus and leading from that. And so she does a load of different things, podcasts and blogs and books, but strengthening the soul of your leadership is a massive recommend from me. I think we might have mentioned that before, but it's a really, really good book around that.
Great.
And then I'm picking back up again, 7 Deadly Sins of Women in Leadership. Which is by our wonderful friend Kate Coleman. And that book was so transformative to me, partly because in the context in which I started to lead, it wasn't always, not everybody was on board with the idea that women could lead.
Okay.
And there was nothing around women leading specifically as women, as opposed to every book that was written about leadership was by men and mostly for men.
Right.
And so there were some pieces of that were missing because women are made differently, and there was nothing around that. So when I read that and realized that there were some shared things that that women see and think and maybe have to work their way through or navigate, or strengths that we bring that perhaps at the time weren't recognized as strengths. This idea often of collaborative leadership was a newer idea, but it's something that perhaps women have been leading in for maybe a little bit longer, have a bit more experience in some of that. And so that book is brilliant. And there's a new teaching series, which I had the privilege of being a little bit of a part of for that. And so I'm kind of going through that again and going, oh yeah. So one of the things in that book is about sometimes women, and I don't think it's just women, but like you can shrink to fit.
Okay.
And what that means is you allow the other voices in a room to be more powerful and not necessarily take your space at the table.
Okay.
And so that has just been so helpful for me as I'm helping other women to lead, really.
Great.
So yeah, those are 2 things I would recommend.
Fun.
How
Cool.
about you?
I flip-flop on this stuff, but I will pick up the theme of Kate's new work. We have it behind us.
Oh yeah, Metamorph.
I think that really speaks to the moment that we are all leading in. We would wholeheartedly recommend that. We would wholeheartedly recommend that you connect with the conversation that Kate had with us on the podcast.
Yeah, we've got a great podcast with Kate. Again, not specifically a leadership one, but obviously she's such a great leader. A lot of that sort of comes out in the conversation.
Yeah, so I think that is really helpful in helping people. Maybe I think there is an awareness from a lot of people who are leading that the paradigms have changed, but they don't perhaps know what to do. And I think
we know it's different.
Yeah.
We know what we're doing isn't necessarily the thing that is helpful to our own soul or to others, but what do we do about it? Yeah, it's really
Kate
good.
is really helpful at maybe filling in some of those blanks.
Yeah.
So would recommend that. I think
Yeah.
that's really, really good.
We'll ask Andy, producer Andy, to pop these links in the chat as
Thanks,
well.
And.
In the show notes.
Great. How do you build team well? How do you build team in church when you maybe don't have many people with a lot of capacity?
It's a really good question. I don't know. How do you? No. So I think a couple of things. I think identifying people is really, really important, and helping people to see what they have, a bit of what we were saying earlier, of what they have to contribute. Nobody will ever feel like they're ready for the thing that God is asking them to do or to be involved in. And maybe our process by which we give people opportunities to have a go at things might need to change.
Yeah.
Because I literally was having a conversation with, again, this colleague, and used to have a policy within the church community that you had to have been a member for so long of the church community, or you had to have been like a regular attender for so long. Now that perhaps people are part of community for 6 to 9 months before they join your physical in-person community, like, what does that look like? How does that work? So I think identifying people and what they have to contribute, what their capacity is to contribute, maybe finding different pathways to give them opportunities to have a go at a few things. I think one of the things that we have been pretty good at over the last few years is feedback loops. So like a briefing before, we've got some great people that are kind of learning how to lead at the moment, and we'll do a lot of conversations beforehand, give them opportunity to do something, to have a go at something, and then kind of have a feedback conversation afterwards. So this is like ongoing learning process. And if you're someone who's like, I don't know how to spot that, there will be other people who will be able to help you with that in your community. So maybe praying and asking God, like, who can help me to go, oh, this person is really great with this. And not necessarily thinking, how do I just fill a rota?
Yes.
Which
please.
I know is really challenging, because some things just need to happen. And I really have been doing this for a very long time. So I do absolutely understand that. But if we can find ways to help people understand what God's graced them with, how that fits in community, and how to support them well to go for it, I think we get much more of the picture of the body of Christ, this interdependent on each other, dependent on the Spirit community, than if we are simply looking for someone to fill a rota. And I'm not saying that's ever wrong, and that, you know, sometimes you just do need someone to like sign the kids in, or you need someone to make the squash or whatever. But long term, that is not a way to build a team, I don't think.
That's not, and to the point that you're making, that's not building a team. That's meeting a function. Which you can. So how do you build team well? Take the sting out of a lot of the negative assumption. We are in our gathered moments, and I'm assuming that's more the drive of the question. How do we build team to achieve like our output as community, is what I'm reading that as. So take the sting out of failure. That's your responsibility as a leader. Respectfully, we're building community, and it really matters, and it's done in the name of God for the glory of God. So it's not unimportant, but it's also not open heart surgery. Like, if the button doesn't get pressed, you'll be fine. You get to try again next week. And that tone comes from you. And so
you set that atmosphere and environment.
And so I talk about, that's the cup of coffee principle, in that I have seen this happen. I've been in a room with significant leaders who ask for hey, is there any coffee around? Any chance? We've been in here for hours. Is there any chance of grabbing a cup of coffee? And somebody picks that up, and it becomes, get me some coffee. And then the next person receives that information as, I need coffee now. And then that gets passed down the line again.
They're really cross that they haven't had their coffee.
If they don't get coffee, heads are going to roll, fuming. And it snowballs, and it becomes a thing that it never intended. But you get to set that tone. And so you might need to inconvenience yourself you might need to make the coffee, figuratively, and just
or literally,
take the sting out of what is presumed as a negative consequence. And if you're thinking about church community, if we don't live stream this week, that's not our preference. It's not what we chose. But if that happens, we'll work it out. Like, we'll get the feedback of, well, what happened? Oh, we didn't press a button. That's okay. Well, then, like, are we covered for next time? Do we know which button we didn't press and why we didn't press it?
Yeah, because we want to win and learn. Like I think that's one of the things that you have been really helpful in helping us think about, like, where did we win and where did we learn, you know? And so to not be afraid of where we didn't quite get it right, but also not to be complacent about where we didn't quite get it where we wanted it to be or where we felt the invitation was.
Yeah.
And so to create a culture and an environment where you can have those feedback conversations without it feeling like, oh, I've done a terrible job and I'm a terrible human being and I can't ever do this ever again. To be like, no, like, let's just
figure it out.
Feedback loops is a really helpful.
To figure it out. Capacity is part of the gig. And 20 years and change in now, nobody ever feels like they've got enough time, team or cash.
So true.
So make peace with it.
And I'm like 30 years in and I agree the same.
And so there'll be moments where you feel like team are with you and you getting more done than perhaps other times. So can you plan for that? Can you schedule for that? Can you diarize some of those moments? And can you be honest with team? Say, listen, I'm going to ask for a big push here. And like, can you be ready to go for that? And if not, can you get some people around who are going to help you do that? And know that, like, before the week before. Like, try and get that to people in good time so that when the push comes, even if they forget or they space on it or they don't pick up the email or the whatever, sometimes we win, sometimes we learn. But there is no magic volunteer who sat around with 100 hours a week with naught to do, going,
and you just haven't noticed them yet.
You just haven't picked them up yet. The adage is generally true. Like, busy people are likely to get stuff done. And so, yes, we need to be safe and healthy and considerate and don't overburden your people and give what's reasonable to, reasonable people, with the understanding that not everything is going to get done every week. But there's nobody, and the people who perhaps have, in our perspective, diminished capacity and not diminished people. And so what's reasonable and what's age
and stage as well, right?
Age and stage.
It's that capacity question. I think sometimes when we're thinking about building team, it might be that we've got this ideal picture of what team is in our mind. But actually someone could do one thing really, really well, and that would be brilliant for them, brilliant for the kingdom, and brilliant for you in leading. And so maybe it's sometimes breaking it down a little bit more, even to go, okay, I can't, maybe this ideal or this idealized picture I've got in my brain of what it could look like, it isn't a possibility right now, but this one thing could be done by this one person. Because for example, we have people who love admin. You and I are terrible at admin.
I do not love admin.
And life admin crushes our souls. I can speak for us on this because we've had this conversation.
It's true.
We have some people who they come alive with
Great
that.
at it. Yeah.
And so then it becomes, okay, that is something that we can share the burden of together,
I think too, and this might not be for everybody, but if you are in that senior position, often by the time it gets to you, it's either gone really, really well or really, really wrong. And so, and a lot of people have a lot of ideas, and that's okay, and they're allowed to, but unfortunately for them in that moment, you are the person who gets to decide which ideas get action and which don't. And so a feedback tool that I have developed over time is to, with sincerity, ask people, what would you like me not to do? What would you like me not to do? And then, what do you mean? And you just give them a little invitation into parts of the community that they're not aware of, because they don't need to be.
No, and legitimately so. That's not their job. That's
not their responsibility. That is your responsibility. And so you say, hey, what would you like me not to do? And you're just giving people the awareness of, like, oh, this exists outside of the things that I love. And then you're giving them the ownership and responsibility to go and find somebody who could do that. Or I want this to be understood, but there's permission then to stop doing something else.
Yeah.
If in community we feel that this is what we should be doing, and I've put it to the right people. What would you like me not to do? Said, hey, actually, we think it's the right time not to do this so that
We can
do that.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
Great. And then we can walk well and honor each other in that. And then we've got the ownership of when it comes back, because it's either gone really, really well or really, really badly. Like, why aren't we? Why haven't we? Why can't we? Why don't we? I've noticed that. Did you know that? You feel equipped to do that really, really well.
Yeah.
And not feel harassed by the nature of what this is. You're never going to get an inbox 0 or the to-do list done. And that's okay.
Yeah.
And so you make peace with why am I frustrated with my perception of people's capacity? And if I can find some health in the answer to that question, I can have better conversations with
Really
people.
good.
Because also sometimes it is all right to say to somebody, I think you got a little bit more in you. I think I've watched you do that, and that's not the best version of who you are. And 9 times out of 10, they'll go, yeah, you're right. Yeah, I flaked on that a little bit. Sorry.
Yeah, that wasn't my creative, but that's still
help
the
me.
story of Jesus.
Because we all do it, right?
Yeah, and again, that your sense of identity or worth is not tied up in that, which is really hard. I think leading well requires you to keep coming back to your own relationship with Jesus. Like one of the questions that we've talked a little bit about, I think, is like, how do you lead yourself well? I think fuel is a really helpful kind of piece of that puzzle. I also think just being in community is really good, and finding safe people that you can talk to about the reality of what it is to be a disciple, a follower of Jesus, an apprentice, because ultimately, if we want to lead like Jesus, we've got to lead with Jesus. And so it can't be separate to our relationship with Jesus. I think sometimes if we're not perhaps in a church environment or a Christian organizational environment, we might think, well, how can I do that? You can do that wherever you are. Like, what does that look like? And to find people who can pray with you and talk with you and walk with you in those things, and for you to grow in your own awareness. Like, does this require a bit more energy in this space? Do I need to like release that to team here? And if you don't have some of the ability to do that, to maybe find others who can kind of come alongside you or encourage you in some of those things, I think are really, really helpful.
Great.
Okay, final question. What has most shaped how you lead?
Most shaped. I think the absence of the preferred. So looking at community or function or ideals, or like we talked about a couple of episodes ago, a romanticized version of what community could be, should be, would be. The absence of the preferred will invite you to learn some things about yourself. Will invite you to develop some skills that you haven't just inherited.
Yeah.
Will invite you to develop language for what you intuit, because you have to explain to people who don't just
see
it the way that you see it. And so the presumption of, oh, well, it's all right for them because will waste your existence, your talent, and your worship. And so if you can lean into this wrestle with the absence of the preferred, then you will get so much better, so much faster, but maybe not in the ways that you perhaps thought you wanted to. We all start with an idealized and a stylized version of something. We all remember the first time we spoke publicly, and what we're doing is our hackiest version of our favorite communicator. And then we get another year in and we go, oh my gosh, I can't believe...
I should not have gone through the check shirts
Right.
and cowboy jeans phase. Let me just pull that on public record. I apologise to anyone who saw me communicate in that era.
So funny. And so what I think the privilege of repetition gives you is the absence of the preferred, in that the assumption is, well, if I had what I wanted, I wouldn't be suffering in this way. And it turns out the invitation of the Spirit is through the things that you don't have, you're refined to take a version of his image in ways that you couldn't even imagine.
Yeah.
And that if you had all of the tools, all of the team, all of the talent, all of the cash,
All of the
time, all of the whatever, you'd be pretty insufferable. And it turns out the environments that we're put in are not to serve us. They're not to elevate our own opinion of ourselves. Because even in our darkest days, they're still quite high. Like we still, because there's a reason often you're in a position of leadership, and it's usually some disformed overconfidence in your own ability in some capacity, right?
Or someone has spotted something and you're going, you can do this, go.
And you believed them.
Yeah.
You believed them because you kept turning up. You did
Yeah.
it. You're not here under duress. You might be here under stress, but it's like you came back again. So like there's a part of you that resonates with. There's a part of you that's like, oh yeah, I might be made for this actually. I might be good at this. I might be whatever. And that's healthy. That's good. Like you got to back yourself. Otherwise it's too weird. But the absence of the preferred will allow you to walk way closer with and to the Spirit than perhaps having everything your own,
neatly lined
your
up.
own way.
Yeah.
And so then that lets you become really creative. That lets you lean into really adaptive styles of things. That lets you lead rather than manage. That lets you develop the confidence of your own voice, which is why we mimic to begin with, because we
don't know what it is.
We don't know what it is.
Yeah.
And there's a thing that you and I and others have seen. I would say the most common thing that people have. So we will say to people, hey, that was great. Now go and watch yourself back, or go and the immediate feedback. Oh, I hate listening to myself. I hate listening to myself. Like, well, you're going to have to get familiar with doing that to get better at the things that you want to do.
Yeah.
And so it's that as a process of like, no, you have to work. And work and work and work and work.
Yeah, it's
and
not like
work.
a little sort of floating in kind of, I'm on a little cloud.
And very occasionally...
a lot of leadership is just hard work.
It's just hard work. And very, very, very occasionally, there are other people who are also doing the work who spot something and go, do you want to work on this together? Do you want to, I think we might do this in half the time. It might look a bit different to what we thought about, but we might get a few more of these edges rounded a little bit more efficiently or effectively. And you go, I think so. And the absence of the preferred is that you will let some of those opportunities pass you by because you're still rounding those, letting the Spirit roll and round those edges on you. And so it's not as you mature into that space, and maturity isn't
and it's not about an age
about
thing,
age.
is it? No.
It's about
because we have like 17, 18-year-olds
on it.
Incredible
just
leaders.
on it. And so it's the ability to action the invitation, carrying the awareness that it's the absence of the preferred.
Good.
For
really
you?
good. So I think two things. I think one is curiosity. I think I have a curiosity that I feed, that I fuel. I'm never satisfied. So I'm an Enneagram 7, which means I'm never satisfied. But rather than seeing that as a negative thing that I'm never satisfied, I actually allow that to become fuel for curiosity. So that might be, who's doing something in this that I haven't thought about yet? What else is someone got? Oh, that's a brilliant idea. I've never thought about it that way. And I don't feel threatened by that. I don't feel like I'm a terrible leader. I just go, oh my goodness, there are other people doing brilliant things and I can learn from them. And so I think there's an element of curiosity that has kept me like, I'm willing to read something or listen to someone, even if I think they're very different from me, because I'm wanting to learn and to know and to develop. So I think there's a curiosity and a desire to use Pete Scazzaro's language, for emotionally healthy leadership. I think that has really shaped me. And then I think people have really shaped my leadership because those who have done a really good job and I've gone, oh my goodness, there's so much I can learn from them. Those who have spotted it in me, invested. I would not be leading in any capacity today if there hadn't been some significant people who had given me those first opportunities, who had gone, like I was a rough and ready like teenager who had just said yes to Jesus and had no clue. I didn't know anything. I was greener than green grass. And yet there was this beautiful voluntary youth leader couple in the church that I kind of connected to as a teenager who said, I tell you what, we think you've got something to work with some kids And so why don't you, with a bunch of other people your age, come to our home and we will teach you. And then the following week, you can then pass that information and knowledge and wisdom onto these 7-year-olds. I can't tell you how important that was for me. And I would never have had the aspiration or the thought even that I could do anything like that. I was never like shy. I've always been quite loud and extroverted. So it wasn't about a confidence of that. It was, but someone being willing to invest in me. And then I have been willing to invest in myself. So I think it's really important to have brilliant conversations with people all the time, honest conversations. I think we try and do that really well as a team and as friends and colleagues. We're trying to speak into each other's kind of leadership and our character formation, all of those things, and not being afraid of that. And then dealing with it when perhaps I don't respond like Jesus.
Right.
And so you have to do that in community. You can't do that. And I wonder if some of the places where we see leadership go a little bit awry is because of isolation, of not hearing or being able to hear constructive feedback, even if it's painful to us, but done in a way that is good for our soul ultimately. So I think people and curiosity, this desire to know and grow and be aware and never feel like I've got all the answers, and wanting to know more, but not in a way that is like, oh, relentlessly, you can't ever make a decision, but just, I'm curious. And I think curiosity has taken the sting out of any sense of shame or guilt or condemnation that I don't know something. Nice. That's been a helpful, I think curiosity is a spiritual practice, but that's a podcast for another day. And then people, learning from people who have done things really well, learning from things that people have done that I might not have done it like that. I'm going, okay, what do I want to, Holy Spirit, what do you want to teach me about that? How do we want to learn from that together? So yeah, I would say both of those things.
Really helpful. I think to make that really practical, can you go and serve a group of people or something that you're not the immediate beneficiary of? Like, can you, and they're doing you a solid. So like if you're learning how to lead or you're developing a skill set, understand that they're doing you a favor right now. But something that's maybe not as Instagrammable, maybe doesn't make the bio, maybe is not the lead line in a networking event, is maybe not the next career progression, is maybe not the next tax bracket, it maybe doesn't play well. But is there a group of people, is there an organization, is there a thing, is there a cause that isn't going to be able to thank you in a way that progresses you in what you would perhaps look for, and understand that you are you're the beneficiary in that environment, and get some of those hard yards under your belt. In that and that sounds a little bit like gnarly old miserable people that have like not keen to give up their position. That it's not that at all. It's we live in an age where everybody has a microphone, and there's not a lot we can do about that now. Pandora's box is open, and so everybody has access to a podcast. Everybody can, that can flick the camera into selfie mode and in real time can become an expert in whatever. But the human condition apparently has the ability eventually to root that stuff out that's not baked in the faithful diligence of allowing the Spirit to roll the edges of you in the places where nobody's looking. And so we have started talking with team about, we think the age that we live in might be marked by leaders who have really thick skin but really open hands. And so you're able to bear what people are going through supernaturally because Jesus is kind, not because you are special, but because Jesus is. And so our ability to take what is painful for people and be present as they process, but being really open-handed with that and not getting calloused and tight and small and angry and frustrated might be the hallmarks of contemporary leadership. Yeah,
this one of the scriptures that has become kind of my prayer this year. There's a proverb, guard your heart for it's the wellspring of life. And so my prayer, and maybe I'll pray this for us unless there's anything else you want to, my prayer has been, God, how do I Help me to guard my heart but not become guarded. Help me to guard my heart and stay tender and open to the things of the Spirit. So let's pray. If you are a leader, I'm going to be praying with and for you. If you are not particularly identifying in that way, but you know of others in your world who are, why don't you pray with me for them? God, would you help us to guard our hearts, recognizing that it's the wellspring of life? Would you help us to guard our hearts but not become guarded? Would you help us to guard our hearts but to remain tender and open to the nudges and the voice of your Spirit? Would you help us to guard our hearts and see those hearts expand and develop and be capable of walking well with you and others? For your glory, Jesus. Amen.
Amen. Thank you so much. I don't know what we're talking about next.
Oh, I haven't got it on the list.
Find out. You have to come back to find out. If any of that is helpful or you want to add...
We've got a guest at the end of next
there you
month.
Go. Come back for that.
Very excited.
Come back for that. Podcast at elimlifechurch.co.uk. Thank you so much for being here. Thanks so much for, if you made it this far, well done.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. We appreciate you.
We really
appreciate it.
And we do love your feedback. So if you've got anything, then get in touch.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.